I've seen over the years too many motorcyclists first get hurt by getting hurt and then get hurt by not having enough insurance. Talk to us about having enough coverage on what we call UM and UIM. Tell us what that is and how riders need to protect themselves from the negligence of others.
Well, one of the biggest issues is your plan. I mean, a lot of times we're seeing some of these motorcycle accidents that are occurring, and people will come in, and the first thing we say is, let us see your insurance policy. And the insurance policy is going to have a liability limit. And what we're seeing is a lot of the state minimums of $15,000. And what ends up happening, and then if they have, the UIM, which is under-insured motorist, or UM coverage, which is uninsured motorist, would have, it has to be equal to or less than the actual policy, the liability limits. So, for example, if you have a $15,000 policy and someone hits you, you may only be entitled to $15,000, and this could be for one of the catastrophic injuries we've already discussed, where someone loses a limb.
All right, so I'm going to repeat that because this is maybe the most important thing we're talking about tonight to help motorcyclists from a law point of view.
Right.
Is that people think of insurance for liability. So here's an example. Dominic gets on his motorcycle leaving WIMG, and he hits someone in a car, and they sue him because it's Dominic's fault. If Dominic has $15,000 in coverage, he's protected for up to $15,000 if he gets sued, and anything above and beyond that comes out of your pocket, right?
Exactly.
Now, the second piece of this law is that now you leave WIMG on your motorcycle, you're following the rules like we talked about, and you get same insurance policy, and you get hurt by a driver who has either no insurance or very little insurance, and you are catastrophically injured. I mean, never to work again injured, and you have a family relying upon you. What happens if the person who hit you has a really small policy of insurance and you have that same $15,000 policy?
You're basically confined to $15,000.
Even if you have a $2 million injury?
Even if you have a $2 million injury, you could have a wage loss if you're a young kid, and you have a wage loss that could get into the millions easily.
And by that I mean, and I don't mean to sound crass when I say a $2 million injury. What I'm talking about is an injury that requires a lifetime of medical treatment, and inability to provide for your family, and a level of harm to your body that warrants that kind of recovery.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. So what we're talking about in terms of injuries, we're talking about the actual physical injury, which could be anything up to and including death, and the subsequent wage loss, economic losses that each of the individuals might suffer. And that goes back to what we were talking about with the husband and wife.
So now here's where we'll bring it home. As you said before, if you've got $15,000 to protect yourself from being sued, you are not allowed to get yourself more than that to protect your family in case you get hurt by someone else who doesn't have enough insurance, right?
Exactly.
So you have to increase what we call your liability limits to get your uninsured or underinsured coverage up to where you need it to be to protect you and your family.
Exactly. And to put this in perspective, we have a client who came in who was involved in a very serious motorcycle accident about 2 blocks from their house in a residential area. And the person had $15,000 policy.
The person who hit
them. And his policy was a $15,000 policy, which he basically admitted that the reason he only had that was so he could get on his motorcycle and ride it around.
So you could drive legally while not having enough insurance.
Of course, and that happens a lot.
Okay.
I mean, you got to look at this as a perspective of, is that enough to cover me the rest of my life if someone else causes me harm?
And this is what we really need to drive home. A lot of people think that insurance is just designed to protect you if you get sued, and they say, I'll just file for bankruptcy. But it's not just that. It's to protect you and your family. If you get so catastrophically injured you can't work, and you're horribly injured and need medical care for the rest of your life, the only way the insurance companies will let you buy enough insurance that way is to also get what we call your liability limits up, correct?
Well, correct. And of course there's always going to be economic decisions.
Right.
That has to come into play, and we understand that. But the key to understanding that is that little additional bump in your premium going to be worth it if, God forbid, you are involved in that catastrophic accident.
Okay.